latest edition of Real Estate, where our Real Talk, where we're putting real estate changes at the forefront, aren't we, ladies?
Yes, we are.
Fantastic. I think we're already a little frazzled. We've spent the last 24 hours, it seems like, with the fire hydrant effect, trying to get ready for tonight. Ginger and Christy, thank you so much for joining us. You guys were two rock stars that were serving on the Texas Realtors Forms Task Force. And quite literally, I think, like 20 minutes ago, two new forms just came into adoption that aren't even posted on the Texas Real Estate website just yet. So without you guys, this wouldn't even be possible. So thank you for giving your precious time and talking about the exciting new forms and revised forms that we will see in mandatory use very shortly. So first things first, let's kind of talk about the timeline a little bit. So Christy, maybe if you want to kick us off, new forms just hit Texas Realtors website today. We'll put that link here in the chat for you guys to be able to go see those behind the member wall. But what are we looking? We've got 2 weeks till that June 24th deadline. Is that an important date?
It is a very important date, because if you think you're going to utilize the old forms, they're going to have disappeared off of the Texas Realtor website, as well as any of your contract document forms, .lib, zip forms, things of that nature. Those will also be adopted to the new forms as of June 24th. So I encourage you, one, you're here tonight. Thank you. You're going to get a fire hose effect from some of these, but go take a class. MetroTex has so many different opportunities for you. Maybe your own brokerage has one, but please make sure you go take a class and that you actually go out on the website and look at those red lines. And then there's also the draft forms available for you. You cannot use these forms currently. They are only in learning mode. So June 24th is when you can use these forms.
Not only can you use them, but you have to use them. So that's the other thing. So Ginger, let's talk about, we got tons of people that are already saying hello, and we appreciate it, guys. So hopefully you'll be asking your questions in real time. But Ginger, let's talk about that, because kind of some of what I have heard has been, oh my gosh, why are they doing this to us? We barely have 2 weeks to even go through the forms, get trained on the forms, and then all of a sudden we have this drop dead date of June 24th when the mandatory rules changes don't have to go into effect till August 17th.
Because Texas wants to help out the realtors. They want to keep us ahead of the curve. All 50 states have to do this by August 17th, but our agents are going to be 100% prepared on June 24th. That way, by the August 17th date, hopefully all the documents will be current and they'll be up to date, and we won't have any drama on August 17th. And as always, Texas is always ahead of the curve, and MetroTex is ahead of the curve too. So we are very, very lucky to be here. I mean, think about, there's 32 states that don't even have a buyer's rep, and they get to get one. We already had one. Yeah. We just are adopting what we're doing. So we're going to make it. We're going to be great.
Well, and okay, so I want to point out to Richard Weeks' statement, the use of TXR forms are not mandatory. However, if you are going to be using the Texas Realtors forms, the new ones are going to be mandatory for adoption at that point. So thank you for the clarification, Richard. Now, all of these revisions and the new forms have come out of the need to make sure that we are adhering to the settlement agreement that has actually come down from a national mandate from NAR. So let's kind of talk about that. First, we're going to have Parker in the background pop up just a one page of all the forms that are they have been revised, as well as the new forms that we can look out for. So go ahead and take a screenshot of those. That's just for quick usage. But let's talk about these ladies while they're up. So I think some of the highlights of the ones that we're going to be talking about tonight, obviously I think there's 17 maybe now. I don't know how many there are in total. But we're definitely going to be talking about the short form buyer representation agreement, the coinciding with the long form. And then we have the two compensation agreements that used to be the registration agreements, TXR 2401 and 2402. And I think those are really important for us to discuss. So I think You guys want to get started with that short form, because I really think that's the one that the buzz is circulating about. So we'll come back, and if anybody needs that picture, we'll bring it back here in just a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and let Parker have a minute so he can bring up that short form. For those of you that have not seen this before or seen a draft version, this is going to be really exciting. But let's talk about, again, what was the ideology behind doing a short form? Because I've had naysayers on both sides, right? So which one of you wants to take that
I'll take
on?
a mention of it, and then Ginger,
Sure.
I'll let you kind of talk more too. So really and truly what we were shared with in the task force is that Texas Realtor members for years have been asking for a one-page short form condensed buyer representation agreement. And this allowed us the perfect opportunity, since we were revising some of these things to be compliant with the settlement agreement. It was a great time to go ahead and pull that up now and make that short form.
Okay, fantastic.
And, here's the bottom line. With the short form, there's two different choices on it. As a task force, we were tasked with the whole state of Texas. So there's different brokerage firms and different models out there. And so when we were writing the forms, we were trying to make sure that we covered all the models and that the different ways that everybody practices real estate, not just one. And so when you get into that short form, you're going to see that there are two different choices on there. So you can go with either full service, and then you would get into the nuances of full service. There's the form now. And otherwise, you could check the showing service. Showing service is just going to be that. You are going to be, they're going to pay you then and there, or your brokerage firm then and there, to show them a property. You're opening the door for them. You have no procuring cause. You do not have any rights to them if they buy that house. You are just getting paid a fee to open the door, because the new rules are telling us that we have to have a signed document in order to get into a showing. So this is going to be the short form, and the way that we're going to be doing that is by choosing one of those two boxes if you choose to use the short form. Now, once you decide you've been on a date with somebody and you want to get married, then you're going to transfer over to the long form that has all the coverage. This does not have all the coverage that we all talk about all the time, and I'm sure all your brokers will tell you that too. But this is what we have been asked for, and it's a good stopgap for us here at the beginning.
And a point to remember, even if you select showing service, that still requires your fiduciary duties for limited service or minimum services. So you still have to be fair, you still have to be trusting, you still have to do all of those things that are required by our licensing act.
Correct.
And that was something that was brought up today, is to make sure that there are so many different things that we have to make sure this doesn't trump or usurp the licensing act or any other fiduciary responsibilities that we have to our clients. But this does suffice the settlement agreement as far as entering into some sort of agency representation and agreement for the purpose of, because you can't even, I mean, that's what we need to talk about. Let's back up for 1 second. What is the new rule that is coming down, as far as what we would need to use before entering a house?
Yeah. You have to have an agreement in order to, you have to be in an agreement with a potential buyer before you can show them the property. So you have to be into either the 5-page buyer representation agreement that you've gone over in detail, done your buyer presentation. You've talked about compensation. They've agreed to compensation with you. And in this document, there's also the agreement of compensation if you're doing full service. If you're doing the opening the door service, then that's going to be a fee that you have to pay at that time before they can open the door. But you are required to have signed documentation before you can show a property.
And I think that's really important, guys, because we had a great intro to our buyer series at MetroTex today, and that was it was Ask the Instructors, and so we had people that actually were submitting their questions, and this was around a lot of it. And I know there's a lot of anxiety to enter into a contractual agreement with somebody maybe that barely knows you. Maybe you're converting them from an open house. Maybe it's a lead. Maybe you're not sure whether or not you want to get married with this client just yet, right? It does go both ways, but it's not an option. And I think that's the one thing that we have to talk about. We have to figure out how to provide tactical application to these things. And your brokers are going to help you. Your managers are going to help you. Of course, Metrotex will help you with great trainings, scripts, and different things like that. But it's just not an option. We have to do this. Now, to that point, and we can go ahead and take that document off the screen just so we can see the ladies' beautiful full faces here for a second. But I think part of that, and Alvin, do you need a representation agreement to show rentals too? What say you, ladies?
Yes.
Even on the rental side, right? Yes.
Yes, you do.
This applies.
This
applies to the rentals.
Buyer-tenant rep agreement. Both forms, long form and short form, are buyer-tenant rep agreement. So.
And I think that's what everybody needs to understand. That is what is legally going to provide you the authority to go and enter into these homes. And just like you have to have an active listing agreement in the MLS, so sorry, just got like 15 texts at once all on this. Just like we have to sit there and have that established right off the bat, we need to understand that whether it's for rentals or it's for anything else, that the MLS actually could ask for those documents to make sure that it is being adhered to, because there is a compliance factor in that as well. So Alvin, yes, the rep agreement is for both buyers and tenants and will need to be followed. So Casey Ross was asking, so to be clear, buyers now have to pay just to be shown properties. If so, will there be a set fee?
Well, that goes to the whole NAR settlement to begin with. I'll read the statement, and it's in the short form, it's in the long form, and it's in many other places. But buyer compensation, or the sharing of compensation between brokers, is not set by law nor fixed, controlled, recommended, or suggested by the Association of Realtors, MLS, or any listing service. Broker compensation is fully negotiable. Brokers independently determine their fees.
So thank you, Christy. And then we'll also put on there, just make sure in the chat, guys. I know sometimes it feels like you're just trying to get some clarity in questions, but we are going to make sure that we are not talking about any type of compensation structures or anything else like that. So
actually,
that's for antitrust.
Cassie, it really depends on which box you check also. So
sure.
Remember, in the short form, there's 2 boxes that you can choose to check from. So that's very clear in the document. Once you review the document and look at the short form, you will understand that it depends on which box you chose to check.
And that statement that I read, that is one of the reasons why a lot of these forms had to be revised, because that statement is what also allows us to be in compliance with that NAR settlement.
Correct.
No, that's great. I appreciate it, ladies. So Adam asked, when do you transition from the short form to the long form?
If you want to get married, if you so just say that I met somebody in an open house and I wasn't really sure that I really wanted to work with them yet or not. I might show them a couple of properties using the short form, and then we get along and we want to transition over to the long form. It really depends on you and your business model. You're all independent contractors. It depends on your business model. You'll be speaking with your brokers about how they want you to handle that and when they want you to transition over. So there's not one defined answer to that.
No. And
I think hold on.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Christy. No, you're fine.
That short form, if you chose full service, it is not a requirement that you transfer over. There's no requirement for that. So if your brokerage allows for you to use that short form on both options, then you can.
And I think that's what I was going to point out. These forms are here. However, it's still up to the individual brokers to set that SOP for the offices. And so there might be a brokerage that does allow you to write out that short form the whole time, Adam, and there might be another brokerage that doesn't allow you to use the short form at all. And then there might be another brokerage that says, hey, the short form's great, but once you get to this point, we're going to expect you to have them sign a long form. And so all of these things are obviously independent from those policies and procedures that the individual brokerages are going to set. So do remember that. We don't want to box Ginger or Christy into anything in particular, right? Right, at least for now. But again, for all the naysayers of the short form, there was something that this was a need, and that this form was derived with the great task force because that need was there. And there were also other entities that were providing more of a touring agreement and other things like that. And we wanted to make sure, if I'm correct, that we still had the proper amount of information in that short form and that one pager that we were comfortable that would give a layer of protection and set that agency relationship between the broker and the buyer.
And, remember, Ashley, we're talking from a national level. We've gotten all of these rules and regulations, and then our Texas Realtor attorneys had to take it down to the Texas level and apply all of the Texas laws into these agreements. And then we, as a task force, had to make sure that all the brokerage firms in Texas were equally represented in what they needed and what their wants were. And, it's not just the Metroplex, it's the whole state. So we tried our best as a forms committee to make sure that we were satisfying all the needs of the state. So like Ashley said, it depends on what your broker sets up as standards afterwards.
So we're going to post, go ahead, let's post, so it's at the top of the chat, the link to the forms that you can get to on Texas Realtors website. Because what I'd love for you guys to do is log in while you're listening to us right now, and then you can click on the forms and see the short form and the long form on there for the representation agreement. Some of that might get answered by there because we do have a short amount of time. And what I do want to make sure is that we at least talk about intent, ideology, some legalities and kind of where we're going from here. And then to Christy's point earlier, we've got a lot of training that we are offering. I know brokerages are offering trainings. The associations are offering trainings. Texas Realtors has some virtual trainings. MetroTex is doing in-person and virtual trainings as well on all of this starting the 25th. And so the best thing to do would get yourself equipped to still conduct real estate and then get your butt in a seat. Because it's going to be really, really important for all of us. I'll tell you right now, I've been reading these forms. You guys were on the forms task force. You've been brokers and managers and are currently in coaching and all these things. It's confusing for us, and we're looking at it all the time. So the best thing that you can do is attend as much of this kind of stuff as you can. So if we do not get to your question, please understand that it is vitally important, and we will get you an answer. Kalisha, about yours, I think that's one that we'll probably take offline and send you an email that, but we're going to go ahead and put our email address in the chat as well. And if it's something you don't feel comfortable even putting in the chat, go ahead and email our communications department, and those will go directly to Ginger, Christy, and myself, and we will make sure. Melissa, yes, the forms, we will have more forms classes. We are working on trying to get those done in the background. Great thing is that our virtual forms class will be recorded. So that will be available for immediate circulation. So you won't have the benefit of being there and engaging in real time, but we will have a recorded virtual class that you will be able to do. Melissa, I'm so sorry. I don't know. We'll double check. So if you go to in there, if you actually look at the website, it will ask you to log in. And then you can kind of see in that address, it's members and then legal and ethics and forms. It's right on the first page once you log into there. And it's the forms changes and adopted revisions. So apologize for that. Obviously, it's going to ask you to link in before or sign in before we do that. So let's go on, ladies, to something else that hot off the presses. We actually got a amendment to our agreement, our listing agreement and our buyer representation agreement, like a half an hour ago? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And why did we get one of those things? Because that's the thing that was giving me the most anxiety, was talking to you guys about the fact that we had to turn around and these were grandfathered in, till August 17th. But at August 17th, are you telling me that I have to get my seller to sign a new listing agreement? So I have to go to my seller Okay, but that's
No
where we were
longer.
until about
There's
45
a
minutes
form
ago.
for that, Ashley.
There's a
Our
form.
new motto in life is there's a form for that. Because the new form that we just got 30 minutes ago, Christy and I are on the task force and they did send it out to us. And I think it's linked in here. But the bottom line is we're trying to help y'all stay compliant with the NAR settlement. And so this form will help you keep compliant. Any document, any listing agreement or buyer's rep, it lists which ones on the document that is signed before June 24th, that is dated before June 24th, then you would use this amendment and that would make you compliant with the NAR settlement. And so it's very clear on there. It'll be easy to get your clients to sign. You don't have to terminate and re-sign. So it's a great document, and it will be really very helpful for all of us in our listings and buyers reps.
That was something that was really important. We were just talking about this at the broker summit. And I appreciate the forms task force taking all of that. And that wasn't from there, but that was obviously a lot of people were having anxiety saying, okay, well, the agreements might need to be updated, but it's still a legal contractual agreement that we're going to have to terminate. And nobody wants to sit there and talk to a client and say, hey, I want you to terminate the relationship that we currently have and enter into a new one. So Maria was asking, what is the name of that document? Parker, if we can bring back all the documents again, that would be really helpful too for a second.
The new document is called Amendment to Representation Agreement. It is document number 2701.
Yeah.
And it is covering listings and buyer reps.
So if you look at the bottom of this screen, we've got on the top is updated forms. So those were the forms already in existence that have been updated and or names changed. And then below that are new forms that are completely new, and that's at TXR 2701, Amendment to Representation Agreement. So that's an exciting. We've talked about the short form. We have now talked about the amendment to the representation agreement, which is huge, that we don't have to scare everybody into terminating relationships. So we appreciate that. Ladies, which one do you want to go to next? I think compensation has been a huge hot topic because, as we all know, compensation is going to be taken out of the MLS. But Maria, no, that amendment is not on the website yet. Just that's what Maria is asking. That literally came like 45 minutes ago. So we downloaded it. We put the name on there. So just stay tuned. Hopefully, maybe it'll be uploaded by tomorrow. But that's obviously something that you don't have to use until we get to that stage of needing to make sure those agreements are in compliance for that August 17th date. So we've got time on that one. But let's talk about the compensation agreements. So a big part of the rules changes is obviously the fact that unilateral compensation is going to be removed from the MLS. Compensation is not going to be unilateral anymore either. And that was something that came out of our discussions today that people need to understand. But that there are avenues. We're going to go off track and not talk about the form itself. Let's talk about the rules change. There are avenues where offers of compensation can be marketed. It just can't be anywhere on the MLS, or it can't be something that is going to direct you from the MLS to an offer of compensation. But we're going to have to figure out, because everybody's going, well, how do I get paid? So the compensation agreements are going to be our new friends and our new tools, obviously, going forward. So let's kind of walk through that, ladies. Let's talk about an example. Maybe there's an offer of compensation. Maybe you're negotiating, the offer of compensation directly with the listing agent as a part of your offer. Because multiple people can pay your professional service fees too, right?
Right.
Yeah. So what would I do then to ensure that everybody understands and has agreed and signed upon, would I use a compensation agreement to make sure that all of that is clear and transparent?
If the listing broker is going to be paying the buyer's broker, that is when you would use the particular document that we're talking right now. The compensation between brokers. That is taking the place of MLS. So in MLS, we had the compensation in there. This is going to be that document. And so you would need to get this document signed. The document, so say in a multiple offer situation, the listing broker could sign 3 or 4 of those. The document only goes into effect if a contract is executed and goes to fruition. So it's not something to fear in that sense. But the document is for if the listing broker is paying the buyer broker. And so there's several other directions that we can also be compensated in, but this is what the use of this particular document's for. This is not if the buyer is paying the buyer broker, or if the seller is paying the buyer, who's going to then use that money to pay the buyer broker. So this is only if the listing broker is paying the buyer broker.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so let's talk about the other compensation agreement, which, let's see, which one is that? Let's pull that up.
Broker owner one.
Yeah, that's the broker owner one. Okay, so let's talk about that one for a second. What we'll be using that one for?
So you'll think about this. One, it is going to be, maybe you've got a FSBO that you're encountering. You would use that just like you did in the past. You would still use this form. But maybe it's where the broker is trying to get the owner to pay them compensation. In that regard, where there are unrepresented, maybe you've got various different options that you would utilize this, but the most prevalent one is where you're going to see for sale by owners. That I think is where you're going to see this document the most.
Okay. Well, fantastic. We've got that one sitting on the screen for you guys. Okay. What's another thing? You guys were in the task force. You were in the thick of it and everything else. What was some of the conversation around some of these things that you know, kind of maybe not the light bulb moment or anything else, but I know there was a lot of interesting conversation that was going on there. And of course, we don't want to share anything that's privileged. But I mean, what are some things that we need to really be thinking of? Because you guys were the ones talking about it and everything else, practical application in the marketplace, some things that we might get caught off guard about with the new forms changes, with the new rules mandates. Kind of let's talk about that for just a few minutes.
You know,
I kind of think one of the biggest things that you all will need is a new dictionary. You know, we no longer have the word commission. It's now compensation. We no longer have the word prospect. They're all clients. So we have to be aware of what we're doing, and everything has to basically be done on the front end. So as a buyer's agent, you have to have your buyer presentation, your buyer compensation agreement, you're doing the whole agreement with them and talking to their lender. All of that has to be done up front before you start showing properties. Now, I personally think that this is great because I think it's going to elevate us to a more professional level. It will eliminate showing the tire kickers and the bad people out there. And we will be much more professional. The sellers will appreciate that we are actually bringing in real buyers to their real houses to really buy them. So yes, it's more work on the front end, but I think it's going to elevate us to a much more professional standard.
And I'll add that the ability to be very transparent through this, you know, that was part of the settlement as well. Transparency with our clients. This allows these forms, the buyer rep agreement, the one pager, all of that allows for that transparency. And it also allows for you to have a great counseling session to really educate and help your buyer, help your seller understand what they're doing and why they're doing it, and why you suggest one thing as the professional realtor, and why you are asking for your compensation as a professional realtor. That is all part of this.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Well, and I think that's really, really important. And those were some of the questions that we had, you know, that the audience asked the trainers today. And one of them was talking about, well, is this enforceable? And it was a question. I was like, well, the buyer representation agreement's always been enforceable, you know. And I think there's just a mindset shift of people understanding that we never worked for free, but yet that kind of remained in the vernacular. And so nothing's changing from the standpoint of you always charged for your services. It just differed in the parties that were doing that. I've had buyers in years past pay my professional service fees when for what yeah, absolutely. Hey, Mr. Buyer, this is what I charge, and I will first try to seek this from the seller. And if the seller isn't offering to pay for my professional service fees, I'll let you know that is going to be the case. But this is an enforceable agreement, and I'm going to come back to you. Okay, great, Ashley. Let me know when that happens. Okay, but I think there is a scarcity mindset, especially for the different types of business models out there that are not bad. If you are more of an online lead generation based or anything else, when we're talking about warm and referral basis and everything else, I think that is a little bit easier for that dialogue. But there are a lot of business models and a lot of people out there that don't just work by referral. And so I think that's where the script trainings, and going to these coaching and training sessions are going to be so imperative, because who wants to waste that much time? To Ginger's point, we want ready, willing, and able buyers that are also going to commit to that process too. So you can might be focusing on a smaller group, but at least that group is wanting to be converted and really truly looking to buy a home. Brian did ask, will there be a non-MLS website where brokers can find the compensation amounts, percentages for each other? Okay, so here it is. But on your physical brokerage website that is not being populated through an IDX feed through the MLS, you can kind of have like a stagnant landing page that doesn't auto-populate through our MLS that is offering, if there is an offer of compensation that is being offered on that listing. Is that correct?
That's correct. The brokerage website can have on their own listings, if they're offering compensation, what it is. You guys have to remember that the rule is it cannot be an MLS, and don't even try to fool MLS. The MLS department is going to be the police on this, and they will catch you. Don't put a clock up that says 3 o'clock. It's not going to work for you. It'll get caught. But there's no rule that says it can't be on your website. There's no rule that says there can't be a sign in the front yard with it, a brochure that says it. You can put it with your listing on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I mean, it doesn't say anywhere else. It just has to do with the IDX feed. It will not go out to syndication. It will not be on Broker Bay. It will not be on Showing Time. It will not be on anything that has the IDX feed. So think of all the other places you can put it instead of trying to trick the places it can't be.
Good point.
Well, and that's, absolutely. But I want to bring back too that everything is negotiable on both sides. So there can be an offer of, there might be a willingness to offer compensation, but amongst the negotiation, maybe that changes. And because that's what somebody brought up today. And they said, well, what I've learned, if there's a marketing flyer and there's an offer of compensation, I'm going to print that off to make sure they don't change it later on. And guys, it's no longer unilateral. Like that's not binding. Like what it said in the MLS is what it is. That has changed. So I think we still have to go back to everything is negotiable. Just because somebody is not marketing that there's an offer of compensation doesn't mean that there's not an offer of compensation that could be made, or that you can't negotiate into the contract. So yes, I understand why we want to really get to the brass tacks of where can I put that information. I want people to know that we're still going to be willing, that the seller and the listing broker are still willing to offer, compensation. But it's okay also to note that it's negotiable, and you still have that negotiating skill set to be able to decide whether or not what that looks like.
Show your expertise. I think that's negotiate for your client.
Exactly. And that's why if it's a listing broker paying a buyer broker, you use that compensation agreement. If it's going to be the seller paying the buyer, you're going to put it in special provisions. I mean, it's all negotiable. It's all transparent now. And everything depends on the offer, depends on the time, just because your seller said no, well, 3 months into the listing, your seller may be going, oh, help me, somebody do something. And all of a sudden, somebody writes an offer that asks for contributions, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, we're off to the races. The seller said yes. And so it's okay. That is all there. You have to have some good negotiation skills because everybody has to negotiate for their client.
Ginger, Fran wanted to know, what did you suggest goes in special provisions? You say
So
that again?
you're going to have to talk to your brokerage firm, but what has been suggested to us is that you could put in there, and make sure you talk to your broker before you do anything like this, is to put something to the effect of seller will pay buyer X number of dollars at closing and funding to go towards the buyer broker's compensation. So.
And we also have a form that might make it easier too, where it doesn't have to go into special provisions.
Correct. There is a form for everything now. We do have forms for all of that. So, and this is the thing, you guys, now that we have all the forms and we've got the forms and we're studying the forms, now you're going to have to go to each one of your brokerage firms and see how they want you to use them. Every brokerage firm is going to be saying something different. And so you need to follow the policies and procedures of your brokerage.
So question, so is that form, Chrissy, is that the TXR 2406?
Yes, it is.
That we were talking about?
It is.
Okay, fantastic. So you guys, that is going to be an addendum regarding broker's fees to contract concerning the property at. And so that will give you the opportunity to get very specific. It is the buyer, buyer's agent, seller, listing agent, that all have to sign that agreement. So there we are right there. So there's a go ahead.
Some background on that. So obviously we as Texas Realtors can't change the TREC 1 to 4 family contract or condo contract or what have you. But so we can be nimble and quick and pivot quickly at the association level where TREC cannot. So the first time TREC is going to possibly amend and change the 1 to 4 or the residential promulgated sales contracts would be in January of 2025. Yeah. So we had to offer something for our members in order for them to be able to use it and not necessarily practice unauthorized law.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thank you so much, Parker, for putting that form up there. So I am seeing a theme in the chat, and so I'm not going to address each question individually. But there's a lot of conversation around, well, if the seller's not willing to offer and my buyer can't pay, I mean, again, that hasn't changed. I mean, that was always negotiable as far as what the seller, what the listing broker was going to offer as far as compensation. I think what we're really doing is we're bringing this into the forefront of some did not require the use of a buyer representation agreement in past. It is now mandatory to have an agreement in place. And so I think that's where a lot of this is coming into the forefront. But what do you guys say about that? So Ginger, what are you talking to your agents as far as what that looks like? Because that very well could happen that you're charging one set for your professional service fee for buyer representation, but the offer of compensation is either nothing or maybe not what you've said in your buyer representation agreement. So what does that look like?
Well, I think that's all the conversation you have before you start showing your buyer properties. You need to know, and this is why you need to have a relationship with a lender also, because you need to be having that conversation of, do they have it? Can they have it? Will they have it? Do they want to pay it? Do they not want to pay it? Is the buyer going to instruct you not to show properties that are not offering compensation? A buyer could do that. I mean, we can't steer a buyer, but they could certainly say, I can't pay this and I do want representation, so please don't show me that. You have to have these conversations with your buyer before you get into thick of showing. And this is also where the lenders come in. You have got to be communicating with the lenders, because the lenders are going to have to make sure that these people are able to do what they're saying. And there's so many different ways around it now. That document that Christy was just going over, you guys, that document could get you paid from 3 different avenues. Yeah. That it could all collectively add up to a different commission rate. I mean, so there's so many more ways now that we can do this. And so it's all going to be, my education to people is you need to be talking. You need to be talking to your buyers. You need to be communicating with them. You need to be communicating with your seller. You need to explain to the seller if, a buyer is unable to pay the compensation that may eliminate them from looking at your home. And so we might want to consider offering some compensation. And so it's all negotiable of whether there is or is not compensation and how much. That's on the listing agreement. That's on page 1 of the listing agreement. And so it's all right there.
Well, I'm going to interject real quick because there's nothing like your child trolling you in the comment chat. So nobody, Christy and Ginger, you are not Poopsie. I am Poopsie, by the way.
I want her to be Poopsie. Darn it.
Yeah. So thank you, Alex, for keeping your mom humble. So no, and I am seeing a lot about buyers instructing to not wanting to see properties that aren't offering offers of compensation. And again, having those conversations up front and the consumer, the buyer dictating how they want to handle those things, that's up to the buyer. And you need to be having those explicit conversations and have a standard operating procedure across the board that you have the same conversation with every buyer, no matter what their financial means are or anything else. And I think that is really important to articulate. And here's the other thing. It's something that from a practicality, remember tactical application, we're talking about in a perfect world, you would know the offers of compensation across the board. You talk to your buyer before you go and show a property because you want clear transparency and you want to know before you walk into that door. But it's, from that side, it's one of those things where understand in real time, if a buyer sends you a property that they want to go see and you've got 2 hours before you need to add it to your itinerary and there's not a website or a marketing flyer or something else where you can clearly, readily get that information on whether or not there is going to be a willingness to offer compensation, then have that conversation with your buyer, but you might not know if they're willing to offer compensation before you show it. And again, I go back to the example that, and it's really funny. Parker just put me in the private chat, so we can still see Alex's comment, but the rest of the people might not necessarily. So if people watch this back, it wasn't fake. Yes, Denise, you can call the listing agent and ask, but I'm talking about tactical application of these things in the real world, in the marketplace, when you're pounding the pavement. You might not get to the listing agent in time. What if the listing agent is I'm just going to use myself, for example. I was in that buyer series today moderating for 2 hours and my attention was there. And that's what I was doing. But what if you need to go show one of my listings, Denise, and I don't answer you? Your buyer might still want to see that property. And that's something that you need to talk to them about. But I always use the example of how many times do we see like it's an all capital, like, seller is selling as is, will make no repairs. And my client goes, but I really want to see it. And I'm like, all right, well, let's see. Bet they might make repairs. And then you turn around and you still get an inspection and the listing agent goes, but I said it was being sold as is. Well, that doesn't matter. My buyer still has the ability to do due diligence. And then we turn around and we still ask for repairs. Sometimes the seller might hold steadfast because they just can't financially make repairs. Sometimes they just don't want to deal with it. But guess what? Often I get the repairs negotiated. Right? You don't know what you're going to be able to negotiate on behalf of your buyer until you actually try. So I think that's something important. Don't take it just for face value. If you can't figure out what that offer of compensation is before even touring the property, have that conversation with the buyer and have that buyer direct you as to what they want to do at that point.
You can always try in an offer to ask for compensation. There's nothing that says the seller hasn't changed their mind. Your offer is so strong that they're okay. Why not? I'm tired of looking at this house. I need to move on. You don't know the circumstances of that seller. And so, there's a lot of different negotiation tactics that we can use.
So, and Melissa responded to Penny, but that is a good question. Can we put in MLS to refer to the broker's website? And actually, Ginger, I asked you this earlier. Did we know? And Christy, you might actually be the person we need to talk to because you might be on the part of the board at Netris. But the conversation, because there can be nothing directing you back to an offer of compensation through the MLS, right?
Right.
So there should be nothing in private remarks. There should be nothing in supplements or attachments. If there's a direction to a broker's website that has offer of compensation. So do we know on the website specifically, are we still going to have the brokerage website listed on the MLS? That was a question that came up today.
As of this point in time, yes, you will still see even the agent's personal business website. You can see the brokerage's website. So currently there is no plans to remove that out of the information. Now, if you're putting in special provisions, something like go to my website and see what you'll get, or any kind of trickery with words to direct somebody to that website, as in you can see compensation offered, that will get checked by the listing checker and you'll get flagged.
Awesome. Okay, and just a reminder, guys, we don't need to put anything about the amount of compensation, percentages, fees, or anything else in the chat. It is a lovely antitrust violation, and I know you don't want me to read that whole disclaimer, but just make sure going forward we don't put anything like that in the chat. It's anywho. So going forward, Donna asked, where would you put it on the offer asking for compensation?
So again, Ginger already said that it could go in special provisions, or you can use the addendum that we just talked about and just referenced. Yes. So either option is available to you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Or a combination of both. It really does also depend on the lender, and it also depends on your brokerage firm's standards. So yes, you definitely, I know that we've said that a lot, but everybody is adopting different standards now. And so you have to make sure that you are following your company's standards and you're doing what the lenders need you to do. And so the lenders are, the ones that are having to learn a whole bunch of new stuff now. So we are taxing them right now.
That is something really important to highlight because, guys, it's always been smart to align with really great professionals on the affiliate services side on both lending institutions, lenders, and title companies. Because even from the title side, on how the compensation is being paid by multiple entities or anything else like that, I mean, there's things that are going to be changing in real time for both of those entities, and you want to make sure that they are educating themselves. And that they are up to date on what that looks like, especially on the lending side. We just talked about before we got on that the VA actually just put out that they are going to require a compensation agreement, a broker compensation agreement to be signed and be a part of the package for all VA loans going forward. Now, they did say it's in local marketplaces where it will not be dictated through the MLS, which we know it's a national mandate for most areas, or everybody that's opting in. So I think that's basically obviously going to be for the majority of us. But that is now going to be a requirement. So there's a clear transparency. Now, the VA buyer is able to pay that compensation. But that that is going to be a requirement as the loan packet for all VA loans going forward. We just found that out before going on. So yes, the lenders in real time are dealing with a lot of changes, but those are all things that we need to be having a discussion about.
To that effect, I know we have a couple things to address in the chat, but I want to make sure that everybody understands this is all very fluid. Look how fluid it is. In the last 30 minutes, we got new documents. Everything. Yeah. And here's the cool thing. You're all part of MetroTex. We are keeping you up to date on when it happens. We are letting you know when something new's changed, what has changed, how it's changed, because it's going to keep being fluid, you guys. And so it's going to keep changing, and we will update you on all of that.
So I'm gonna touch on no showing time, no broker bay, no documents uploaded into transaction desk that is available, because all of that can be accessed through the MLS, guys, or is connected to the MLS. So, and here's the other thing. There's a lot of workarounds that are being discussed. Talk about what we can do, not trying to find a workaround around the things that we no longer can do. Because I think there's so much that we still can do. So don't worry about it. I saw somebody said something about a photo or maybe a funny words in a listing description or anything else like that. Communication is the key to all of this. Communicate as a listing agent, communicate as a buyer's agent, communicate with your clients. All of this is just bringing relative upfront, transparent communication to the forefront. And everything, again, is negotiable. So yeah, somebody might have on a marketing flyer that they're willing to make an offer of compensation. But what if you bring in an offer and the seller goes, well, I'm not willing to make the offer of compensation based on that offer more? It's not a unilateral offer of compensation, right, Ginger?
Right. That's right. And, you know, that's the whole thing, you guys, is you're not used to how fluid this all is. And this is very, you know, you have to be able to realize that that's what the whole ruling is about, is it has to be transparent. And this is where we are on all of that. And I think that don't worry so much about how I can get around an MLS. You guys, there's plenty of other places you can talk about it. And remember, it will be an MLS violation. And MLS department has not said yet what the penalties are going to be, but there will be penalties. And so don't worry about that part. Worry about what you can do to better your real estate business. What can you do to elevate your buyer and your seller to make everything better? Don't look for these negative workarounds.
And it might just even build better rapport and networking within our fellow agents when we're working together, because we've gotten into this component of we just email out an offer. We don't talk to anybody. We just text back and forth. Maybe this might build some rapport amongst ourselves.
So just want to double check. So the forms themselves are going into, so they're already adopted. They will be up for use in our forms libraries and .loop and different transaction formats on June 24th. The old forms will be gone. Okay. Correct. So they are gone. August 17th is the drop dead date as to when all of these changes had to be in effect. And for the whole country. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. So understand, Texas Realtors, with our amazing forms task force that Christy and Ginger were on, decided, hey, we need to roll this out and pump this out as quickly as we can, because we need to give enough runway between the new forms and when the changes have to be, mandated, from a national perspective. And so we almost get 2 months of grace, at least, with making sure that we understand them, that we're adhering to them, that we're doing all things before the national mandate comes rolling down. So I think that's really good to make sure that we articulate this isn't a penalty by Texas rolling them out now. This is really giving us more runway, before those national mandates come down from that side. And Philip just made a comment. So Philip Walker, he is our MLS advisory chair, and the MLS committee has formed a task force to hash through these issues and how violations are going to be handled. And that's important to note that that is who is going to be the compliance arm, just as we are now with listing agreements and making sure if there's ever anything that comes into question. So we don't know. Hi, Johnny. We don't know exactly what those are going to look like. But again, if you're doing it the right way, you don't have to worry about, penalties and compliance pieces and everything else. So, we've only got 8 minutes left. This goes so fast. And so we want to make sure one question. So from Fort Worth Property Group, when do we have to take that out of the MLS? So you won't be taking it out of the MLS. Netris will be taking the offer of compensation out of the MLS, right, Christy?
Yes, that field will completely disappear.
And do we know where are we at right now on the track for that happening?
Absolutely. So the board of directors meets next Tuesday, and they have to approve these changes, although they are not able to differentiate that or choose not to approve them. It's kind of a have to. But again, we have to change our rules and regulations at Netris for this to take place. The other component is our vendors for your Paragon and CoreLogic for Matrix. They have to do software changes, code changes to get those components removed so that, one, we can restore the historical data, but yet that it's not forward facing coming August 17th. So we are quickly working, they are quickly working so that we can all be in compliance by or before August 17th.
So to answer your question, we don't know.
And the exact date, I don't know.
We don't know. And like Ginger has said multiple times, this is very fluid. This is ongoing. There are a lot of moving arms. But just note, we have amazing volunteers in these positions like Christy and Ginger and myself and so many other people in the chat that serve on these boards or in these task forces, talking about that and driving those changes to be done in a very expeditious time frame. All right, Debbie's commented a couple of times, so let's at least scratch that itch for Debbie. And she's talking about contracts already in effect with commissions for builders. Do we need to send them some sort of form? What can we do? And that's obviously been a topic of conversation for a lot of people because builders have different strategies of offers of compensation, bonuses, different things like that. So can you ladies talk to us about how we should be handling that going forward?
So in the buyer rep agreement, you're going to have an option for bonuses and other types of compensation that might be available for you, the buyer's agent or the listing agent, that type in that way as well. So you'll have bonuses that you'll be able to address there. There is an amendment to the buyer rep agreement. So if you're not under contract and you need to make an amendment coming August 17th for a builder purchase, then you can make that conversation. You can adjust the bonus structure there. You can adjust the commission structure there. It will be available to you in the buyer rep agreement, as well as the amendment.
So to touch on that, Debbie, so basically, if you already have an agreement in place, you've got new construction that's already being built, it's going to be, done after August 17th, then you can use that amendment with your buyer representation agreement to be sufficient, right, with the updated changes of the language. So that's it. So Debbie, you'll need to amend once you have the opportunity to. So after June 24th, you can use that amendment to satisfy the requirements since you're already in queue with the builder. So that's a great conversation. The other part of that is we're hearing a lot. Well, what if there is a bonus or an offer of compensation that is not already defined in my buyer representation agreement? Is there going to be an ability to go back and amend that agreement?
Yeah,
absolutely.
You can always amend your buyer's rep agreement. You can always amend your listing agreement. So if you think that your client's going to buy a pre-owned home and all of a sudden they switch to new construction, you can amend your buyer's rep. I mean, you can add all of that in, and you can do that. So don't worry about that part.
Okay. But that's great. And I know that amendment was updated as well for the buyer representation agreement. So guys, that's an option, because let's also highlight what a part of that is that you cannot charge or you cannot receive more than what is dictated or stipulated in that buyer representation agreement. So we're not going to talk about what that looks like. It just means if you have X amount in your buyer representation agreement, you cannot exceed that X amount of dollars. Now, you can turn around and you can amend that agreement, but understand that that is a part of the new rule subset. So whatever that buyer representation dictates, that is what the offer of compensation that you can receive.
Correct.
And Johnny Moad, who is our esteemed president-elect of MetroTex, is absolutely correct with some of the commentary that's coming in. Not that we wouldn't love to digress and talk about it, but speak to your broker if you have really specific questions of enforceability and legality and what's going to go on with the grandfathered agreements versus what happens when the changes come. And if you do have, and there's any additional confusion and that's what the Texas Realtors legal hotline is there for. And so Johnny's absolutely right. That is something that is vitally important to make sure you talk to your broker. And if you need to, you can call that Texas Realtors hotline. So Melissa, yeah, I mean, that's a business decision on your end. If you want to accept less than what's stipulated in that buyer representation agreement. So these are all great questions and we really appreciate it. Obviously an hour is not enough time to go through, I think, like 17 forms, changes, updates, revisions, 4 new forms and everything else. Parker, you can just snap one more time up there the list of all of the forms that were either revised and then the 4 new forms that were constructed. So guys, again, this is on the Texas Realtors website, so you can find all those on there. But this is the quick list that you can at least reference to make sure that you download the new forms and you can be looking on that. So all of that is going to be there for use on the Texas Realtors behind the members wall. And please note again that amendment, or I think, which one was it? Which one was it that came out of left field that we don't have just yet?
The
2701.
The representation agreement, the 2701 is the
Got
one
it.
that is the new one.
Okay, so don't panic if you don't see TXR 2701 just yet. Continue to check back in at Texas Realtors website. We so appreciate it. You guys have been awesome. We will make sure that we continue to have our forms classes so that you guys can get trained up. We appreciate you so much. Ladies, what would you like to leave our audience with this evening?
I think my biggest thing and takeaway is these forms give you the opportunity to really have that counseling appointment with your client, to really talk about it, to really discuss it. So, and again, to show your expertise, to be able to be the pro that you are.
And for
Ginger,
me,
what say you?
I think this is going to elevate us to a much higher level of professionalism. I think it's going to take us to a much higher point. Yes, we will have realtors that leave the business over this, but you know what? Those of us that are professionals and a professional standard, we're going to be great. This is not negative. This is going to be a little chaotic at first, but you know what? It's all going to level out and we're going to rise above it. You guys, most of us survived 8, 9, and 10. We're going to be fine. This is going to be fine. We will survive.
And I think that you took the words right out of my mouth, Ginger. I think the biggest thing is great opportunity does not come out of, I'll say complacency, not that we weren't complacent, but this change is going to force us to level up. And I think that is exciting because sometimes we need that push in the right direction. And as long as we continue to articulate what our value proposition is, I know we're hearing that all the time. Articulate it, but you got to figure out what your value proposition is too. So guys, this is really your opportunity to hone in, sharpen those skills, negotiating skills, everything else. Get your seats, get your butts in those seats to be trained by some of these amazing women that are on here tonight. And I appreciate everybody participating in the chat. And again, go ahead and feel free. We'll put that email address in there again. If we didn't get to your question, please send that question directly to our communications department, and we will make sure to get those things answered for you. Thank you again, guys. We will see you very, very soon. And